On the platform, her name is Jen. I don't think, is she in here still? There's Jen back there. Will you tell Jen, great job? Love that, love you. Jen is going to serve alongside in our worship ministry here on staff, as well as women's ministry. And so she'll start mid-July and the beginning of August, kind of a staggered start. But Jen, it's great having you on a platform this morning. I'm so excited for your role and your leadership here with worship stuff and women's ministry stuff. It's just going to be a really, really significant time. So thank you. It was great to have you with. I'm glad you're going to be here next service. Now, I'm super excited, but I'm not that excited because we're still like a month and a half away. So be excited about this, but you're like, I'm going to introduce some people to you, and then you're not going to see them for a little while, but that's okay. They're coming. You understand? You understand? So you might not see Jen next week, but we're going to enjoy her today, but then she's coming. You got it? Yes. Okay. So make sure that you meet her, introduce yourself, and make sure that she feels like part of the family. A couple other hires, they were here in the first service, are not going to be here for the next two services. So I'll introduce them later to you officially as a church. But just know that God is moving, He's providing, He is orchestrating. And we're so thankful for what God has done, for what He's doing, and how He's positioning us in the future. Really, really exciting stuff. You're going to start seeing some new faces and hearing some new names. As you do, make sure that you're welcoming them into the family, as I pray you're being welcomed into the family as well. This morning, we're going to wrap up chapter 15 and open up just the first 4 verses of chapter 16 of the book of Matthew. So it's taken us a long time to get through this book. It's 28 chapters long, and at the rate we're going, we'll be in chapter 28, probably the beginning of the new year. So we're taking our time to go through it because there's a lot to go through. And so if you have a Bible and brought one with you, turn to Matthew chapter 15, and I just want to read for you the end of 15, beginning of 16. So just follow along and listen. This is what the Bible says in Matthew 15, starting in verse 29. Jesus went on from there and walked beside the Sea of Galilee, and he went up on the mountain and sat down there. A great crowd came to him, bringing with them the lame, the blind, the crippled, the mute, and many others, and they put them at his feet, and he healed them, so that the crowd wondered when they saw the mute speaking, the crippled healthy, the lame walking, and the blind seeing, and they glorified the God of Israel. Then Jesus called his disciples to him and said, I have compassion on the crowd, because they have been with me now 3 days and have nothing to eat. And I'm unwilling to send them away hungry, lest they faint on the way. And the disciples said to him, where are we to get enough bread in such a desolate place to feed so great a crowd? And Jesus said to them, how many loaves do you have? And they said, 7 and a few small fish. And directing the crowd to sit down on the ground, he took the 7 loaves and the fish, and having given thanks, he broke them and gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the crowds. And they all ate and were satisfied, and they took up 7 baskets full of the broken pieces left over. Those who ate were 4,000 men, besides women and children. And after sending away the crowds, he got into the boat and went to the region of Magadan. Now, verse chapter 16. And the Pharisees and Sadducees came to test him, and to test him, they asked him to show them a sign from heaven. He answered them, when it's evening, you say it'll be fair weather, for the sky's red. And in the morning, it'll be stormy today, for the sky is red and threatening. You know how to interpret the appearance of the sky, but you cannot interpret the signs of the times. An evil and adulterous generation seeks for a sign, but no sign will be given to it except the sign of Jonah. So he left them and departed. 2 groups of people. And I put these two, the end of 15 and beginning of 16 together, because I want to highlight these 2 groups of people that approach Jesus. One group comes needy, and one group comes entitled. One group comes to Jesus with broken bodies. The other group comes to Jesus with hard hearts. One group comes to Jesus and receives compassion, and one group comes to Jesus and receives correction. As we look at this passage together, one big idea, and I want this to sink in. Here's the big idea. Jesus has endless compassion on those who come to him needy, but no compulsion to satisfy those who feel that they're deserving. Those who come to Jesus with empty hands, brokenness, and need, Jesus has unending compassion. But if anybody comes to Jesus with this sense of entitlement, as if they deserve something from God, is under no compulsion to do anything for them. Though Jesus will gladly care for the needy, he refuses to perform for the entitled. And so it's really important that we understand how we come before God. It's really important that we understand the right way to come to church, but also to approach God in prayer. It's really important. And we'll see that in these two. In verses 29 through 31, Jesus went on from there, walked beside the Sea of Galilee. He went to the mountain, sat down. The great crowds came to him, bringing with them, look at what the Bible says, the lame, the blind, the crippled, the mute, many others, and they put them at his feet, and he healed them. And the crowd was wonder, they were in amazement that they saw the mute speaking, the crippled healthy, the lame walking, and the blind seeing, and they glorified the God of Israel. This crowd, we know, was from a place called the Decapolis. Everybody say Decapolis. What that means, two Greek words, deca and polis, 10 cities. So this was a Gentile, a non-Jewish area of 10 cities. So that's where Jesus is. And one of the ways we know that this is one of the where Jesus is because when they saw what Jesus did, what's the Bible say? They glorified, what's the Bible say? God of Israel. The God of Israel. It wasn't their God. And so they're realizing, look, we're not part of the group here, but this was amazing what Jesus did. These people have no religious resume. They have no religious pedigree. They have no religious standing. They have no claim to God, no claim to his Messiah. They're not part of God's covenant promised people. They're outside of all those, yet Jesus receives them and has compassion on them because he's compassionate. Please understand this. Unworthiness is not a disqualification for grace. It's a prerequisite of it. Those who have nothing to offer God, those who have no standing before God, that doesn't disqualify one from God's compassionate mercy and grace. That's the prerequisite to receive it. These people bring nothing of value to Jesus. It's just a parade of human helplessness. I want you to listen to this. Great crowds, this is verse 30, came to him, bringing with them the lame, the blind, the crippled, the mute, and many others, and put them at his feet, and he healed them. What did they ask Jesus? Did you see that when we first read it? They made no request. They didn't pray, they didn't beg, they didn't plead their case. All they did I don't even know what to say. I just have so much profound need. I can't even verbalize what it is I need. And sometimes, haven't you been there? God, I don't even know what to say. I don't know what's right. I don't know what's wrong. I don't know what I want to. I can't even verbalize. All I can do, understand, when these people brought all of this brokenness and just here, the implication is if I just get this to Jesus, he'll do something that I can't even verbalize what I need him to do. It's beautiful. Because what it does, it relies on the compassion of Christ, not the value of the bringer. They have nothing to offer. Nothing but their brokenness. And some today are so spiritually exhausted because you've been trying so hard to impress Jesus. Thinking that if I can just do stuff right, God will see my effort and extend his hand. When all that Jesus requires you to say, I got nothing to offer but my brokenness, so many people try so hard to defend themselves, to deny the fact of their own brokenness and error and wrong and sin. Because it's if I admit it, then maybe it's real and maybe I'm not really worthy. That's the point. Please hear me. Stop hiding your limp that he already sees. In verse 32, Jesus called his disciples to him and said, I have compassion on this crowd because they've been with me for 3 days. They have nothing to eat, and I am unwilling to send them away hungry lest they faint on the way. Listen, Jesus sees the need that they can't even verbalize, and he sees the need that they don't even know is coming. They're going to get hungry. Like right now, they don't even realize what they're going to be walking into, but I see it and I have so much compassion on them. I don't want to just meet their immediate thing that they can't even verbalize. I'm going to set them up for my provision in the future. That's how much compassion I have on these people who don't even know what to say, who are outside of the scope of the promise of my Father. And what put them in that position was simply admitting and acknowledging their own brokenness and need and inability to fix themselves. People came for healing. Jesus saw their hunger. It's beautiful. Because we don't have to perform for him. And we don't have to convince him. See, one of the things I love about my God is that Jesus does not need to be manipulated into mercy. God, I've been so, I've tried so, I've given so. Quit manipulating him. Just come before him and say, God, even I can't list for you the things I've done because I've not. I can list for you my failure and how broken I am and how needy I am and how desperate I am. And I realize that doesn't put me in a super good standing, but I'm not relying on my standing. I'm relying on your compassion. That's it. And it's so beautiful and it's so simplistic, but it's so humbling. And that's our problem. Verse 33. And the disciples said to him, where will we get enough bread in such a desolate place to feed such a great crowd? Okay. Do you remember what we read about in chapter 14, a chapter earlier? What was one of the things you read about just a chapter earlier? You Bible students. What did Jesus do? That relates to this story. What did he do? Yeah, he fed 5,000. They just were in the exact same scenario. Except now they had less of a need. Jesus already provided a bigger need, 5,000 men, besides women, probably 20,000 total, and gave an abundance of 12 baskets left over. And now they're in this scenario, not 5,000, now only 4,000. And they even have more supply. Now they got 7. Before it was 5 and 2, now it's 7 and some. And apparently, at least this time, they didn't have to steal it from some little boy. Like they learned a little bit and brought some of their own food. Anyway, like they got, the need is less and the supply more, and now they still, what are they going to do? Do sometimes you look at these people and think, what idiots? Anybody? Yeah. Have we looked in the mirror lately? Like, why is it that we're like, oh God, I know what you did back then, but now this is a whole new ballgame now, I don't know. Let me suggest to you there's something more going on here than just they forgot what God did. Let me suggest to you why they asked this question now. It's not that they forgot what God did. It's because they remember who God did it for. See, when Jesus fed the 5,000, those were Jews. These 4,000 in the Decapolis, they're non-Jews. So the disciples, their problem is not with the supply of God. Their problem is with the scope of God's grace and his mercy. See, the disciples, they knew that Jesus could feed our people. But would Jesus really feed those people? That's their problem. Like God, we're kind of entitled because you fill in the blank. But those, Grace always feels generous until God gives it to someone you would have excluded. Understand? See, the disciples had seen the power of Jesus, but now they're going to learn the grace of Jesus. And it's a lesson for every one of us. Here's the danger of religious people. We believe in grace theologically, but we often ration it relationally. We love the fact that God is a gracious and merciful God. We love that. And we expect that from him. But as far as me and you, the moment you cross me, the moment I'm offended by what you, like we believe in it theologically, as long as it's coming from God to me. But when it's relationally, and now you've done that to me, see, one of the things you have to realize is that it's only needy people who get grace. And once we've received grace, once I've understood that Jesus paid the penalty and the price for my sin that I couldn't pay, by giving his life on the cross for the forgiveness of my sin and then raising from the dead to ensure eternal life. And that act alone deserves all of my allegiance. And once I've given my life and my allegiance to Christ, I receive this incredible grace. It's by God's grace that he even did that for me in the first place. And the moment I receive that, it is so disingenuous for me to keep that and not give the same grace that I've received. even to those people. Now, the interesting thing about grace is you only get it if you admit you need it. If I always think that I'm in the right, if I always think that it's someone else's problem, if I always think that they're the ones who need to, I'm never in a position to receive God's grace. Or if I think that I'm in right standing with God because of how I've lived. I've been righteous, I've been holy, I've been obedient. Of course I'm right with God. That attitude has removed that person from the grace of God. Have you ever heard the idea that someone has fallen from grace? Yeah. Usually that is used predominantly when someone messes up real bad. Someone who's not supposed to mess up. And they mess up real bad. They've fallen from grace. That is such a diabolical, demonic understanding of grace. Because what that does is it keeps someone from the grace of God. The only time that phrase, fallen from grace, is used in all of the Bible, one time, Galatians 5:4. You who are trying to be justified by the law have been alienated from Christ. You have what? Fallen away from grace. You're trying to be right with God by how you're living. You think your behavior makes you right with God. You think you have the right to come to God based on your righteous behavior. You've just fallen from grace. When you're a sinner and you admit your sin, you fall into grace. The religious people fall out of grace. Do you understand? But it's only the people who admit they're broken and worthless, have nothing to offer God, that are in a position to receive the grace of God. It's beautiful. It's threatening, but it's beautiful. Verses 34 to 37. And Jesus said to them, how many loaves do you have? He said, 7 and a few small fish. And directing the crowd to sit down on the ground, he took the 7 loaves and the fish, and having given thanks, he broke them and gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the crowds. And they all ate and were satisfied. And they took up 7 baskets full of broken pieces left over. Those who ate were 4,000 men, besides women and children. And after sending the crowds away, he got into a boat and went to the region of Magadan. Jesus says, look, the need is huge. Take care of it. And their response is, we'd love to. We don't have enough. Have you ever been in that position where like, God, I would love to. I just don't know. God, I would love to say, I would love to respond. I would love to do. I would love to give. I just don't have it. Anybody? Yeah, this has been people's response from day one. 7 loaves, a few fish, like it's not enough. I know what you've asked, God, but it's not enough. Listen, not enough is the raw material Jesus requires. That's all he's looking for. If you've ever felt like, God, I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're asking. I don't have enough. You fill in the blank. God says that's exactly the raw material that I require. Anyway, any of you Bible scholars, let me ask you this question. You look in the Bible and show me where God asked someone who already had an abundance to give him a little bit of leftovers or what he had too much of. Doesn't happen. He always goes to those who don't have enough. And says, listen, I want you to. I know you don't have enough. That's why I chose you. You don't get any more excuses. See, a little bit in my hands is a little bit. A little bit in Jesus' hands feeds thousands. And so we don't get to say to Jesus, I would love to, I just don't have enough. Never say, Lord, I wish I had, ... Always say, Lord, here's what I have. Because Jesus not only uses what we have, Jesus multiplies it. You want more of the little you have? Say, here you go, Lord. Many people, I mean, not here because we do everything right, but other people who are trying to follow Jesus and other churches wait to obey and wait to do and wait to serve and wait to give until they have enough. Until they have enough time, until they have enough money, until they have enough strength, until they have enough confidence, until they have enough energy, until they have enough time in their schedule. Jesus always starts with what looks inadequate. Everything that God has asked of you and of me that we've looked at and said, God, I wish I could, I just don't have enough. Jesus says, that's why I'm starting with you. Hudson Taylor says this, I love this quote, God's work done God's way never lasts God's supply. The reason why you and I don't have enough for what God has asked us to do is if we did, we'd give him leftovers and we'd think that he's lucky to have us on a team. We have another way that this is said, kind of more modern way, is where God guides, God provides. That's why we in this church we've always said yes on the front end of everything. Yeah, sure. Yeah, God will provide. If we're confident God's doing it, it doesn't matter what it look like, the situation looks like. Let's just say yes. Let's say yes and see what happens. Let's actually step on the water and see if we float or not. Let's just say yes. Well, God, wait, you want us to start a church plant and movement in Cuba? It's illegal there. Okay. You want us to do this in Guatemala? Yeah, all right. What, Ukraine during a war? Oh, all right. Yeah, we'll say yes. Okay, wait, you're going to do something now in Israel? While all that mess is going on? Yeah, we'll say yes, absolutely, we'll go there. Oh, wait a minute, Venezuela? After what we did to Maduro, you want to go? Yeah, sure, yeah, we'll go. We've never, ever said, but God, once you provide, then that's not we don't do that because it's not in the Bible. So let me just ask, what's that thing you've been withholding because you feel like you don't have enough of? That not enough excuse is pretty weak. See, Jesus didn't ask his disciples to create the bread. He just asked them to distribute what he would multiply. Friends, that's called ministry. We're not the source, we're the servants. We're not the miracle. You realize that? We just carry it. And so that's this one group that comes to Jesus. But here's this whole other group. Chapter 16, verse 1. The Pharisees and Sadducees came to test him, and they asked him to show them a sign from heaven. He answered them, when it's evening, you say it's going to be fair weather tomorrow because the sky is red. When it's morning, it's going to be stormy today because the sky is red and threatening. Did you know that's like a Navy saying? Red sky at night, sailors delight. Red sky in the morning, sailor take warning. Yeah, I mean, so like this is like, oh yeah, well that makes sense. You know how to do it. And he says, well, you know how to interpret the signs that way, but you can't interpret the signs of the times. An evil and adulterous generation seeks for a sign, and none will be given to it except the sign of Jonah. He left. These Pharisees and Sadducees, very different group. Pharisees and Sadducees. Let me help you understand who these two groups are. We don't read a lot about the Sadducees in the Bible. They really weren't that much of a concern to Jesus. The Pharisees we hear a lot more about. But let me just tell you what they were like back then. You can extrapolate the implication and application to today. The Sadducees, both these groups, Pharisees and Sadducees, both a political and a religious group. One more political, one more religious, but had ties to both worlds. The Sadducees were the wealthy, the elite. I could say they lived near Nantucket. They were more concerned with their political power than their morality. They weren't overly religious if it interfered with their power and their money and their political control. They were religious but not evangelistic. And they rejected a literal heaven, a literal hell. They, quote unquote, trusted the science, so they didn't believe in miracles. And then there were the Pharisees. They were the scripture thumpers. They were the blue-collar people. They were deists, meaning they were God-fearing. And their religion was, and their nation was built on godly principles, but they had a very wrong conception of the Messiah. And they wanted to make their nation great again. And they wanted to rid their land of all the foreigners that were in it. Again, I don't know how that applies to today at all. But when I look at Jesus's time and our time, the thing that runs through my head is Ecclesiastes 1:9. What has been will be again. There's nothing new under the sun. Can you imagine what any of Jesus' disciples, if they were to have come to him and said, Jesus, listen, here's the deal. Yeah, I want to follow you, but I also want you to honor my party. As a matter of fact, what I would like to do is take your kingdom and attach it to my party. Can you imagine what Jesus would have said? He would have said, depart from me. I've never known you because you don't understand my kingdom. Does everybody hear me loud and clear? We don't attach Jesus to our political party. And we don't ask Jesus to bless our kingdom. We submit to his kingdom. So these two come, and here's how you know you're verging on this Pharisaic attitude. This Sadducees attitude. When they looked at themselves and people, there was self-elevation and others' evaluation. They were masters at evaluating everybody else and elevating themselves. Huh? Anybody? So the crowds come with suffering. The Pharisees and Sadducees come with suspicion. The crowds come simply asking for mercy. These leaders come demanding proof. They're so arrogant. And Jesus gives grace to the needy. He doesn't do tricks for the entitled. They had already seen enough. He said, you want a sign? And the reason, I don't know if you noticed, it says they demanded a sign from heaven. Not just a sign from heaven. Here's why. Because they believed that a sign from earth, an earthly sign, like anybody could conjure that. But a sign from heaven, like Elijah on Mount Carmel, the prophets of Baal calling out fire from heaven, like that was from God. And so they're saying, what we've seen of you, that could be a trick. We want to see something. You want to prove yourself? Oh, we want to see something from the hand of God himself. And Jesus says, I'm not going to show you a darn thing. You've seen enough. You've seen enough healing. You've seen enough authority. You've seen enough authority for exorcism. You've seen enough fulfilled prophecy. You've seen enough. You've seen enough authority over nature. You've seen enough authority over disease. You've seen enough authority over demons. You've seen enough authority to forgive sin. You've seen enough authority for miracles. You've seen enough. See, our problem, like theirs, is not a lack of evidence. Our problem is a hardness of heart. God, if you'll just do this, God, if you'll give me this, God, if you'll move in now, God, if you'll... Listen, love does not manipulate and faith does not put Jesus on trial. There's a great difference between bringing to Jesus your questions and your wounds and demanding Jesus meet your conditions. It's a vast difference. Jesus has compassion, but he will not be controlled. And he is merciful, but he will never be manipulated. Jesus says, you want a sign? I'll give you the sign, but it's not the sign you want. I'm going to give you the sign of Jonah. Now, Jesus had already talked about this back in Matthew 12, verse 40, I think the verse is. He says, the only sign you're going to get is the sign of Jonah. He says it again here. What's the sign of Jonah? It's the sign of the resurrection. As Jonah was in the belly of the fish for 3 days and 3 nights, so will the Son of Man be in the belly of the earth. Dead. Resurrected. The only sign you get is the resurrection. See, they wanted spectacle. Jesus gave them the cross. They wanted a show and fireworks. Jesus gave them an empty tomb. So that's the only sign you get. He says the same thing to me and you. See, it's the cross. The cross is God's answer to human need, and the empty tomb is God's answer to human doubt. Please, my dear friends, never interpret God's love through the lens other than the cross. Never interpret God's love through any lens other than the cross. This is where we go wrong so often. We interpret God's love through my pain, through my circumstance, through the peril I've been through the injustice I've suffered. And we think, God, if you loved, if you were powerful, if you could, why? And we interpret our pain and our difficulty and our tragedy through something other than the cross. The cross is God's answer to every need we have. And the empty tomb is the answer to every human doubt. To interpret our experience through something other than the cross, to interpret God's love through our experience rather than the cross, is to deny the cross and is to lessen God's love. And if that continues too long, please hear me, you will walk away from Christ. If you allow yourself for too long to interpret God's love through your experience and your pain and your tragedy and your broken dreams and your broken life, you will eventually walk away from him. The cross. That's how I interpret his love. The cross is God's it's God's declaration that I am more sinful than I want to admit, and I'm also more loved than I ever dare to hope. The cross says I am so sinful and so broken, I cannot be right with God any other way but through the death of Christ. But that same cross that condemns me for how bad and sinful I am also then says, but you are also more loved than you ever dared hope. And when you accept that, I come to this loving God and say, I'm relying on your compassion and your mercy and grace. What a beautiful way to live and to experience the God of the universe in my life. What beautiful. And if the cross and the resurrection aren't enough to make you surrender, no lesser sign will be enough to satisfy you. And I thank God that he's picked me up when I've fallen. And he's turned me around when I've walked away. Not because I deserved it, because I came to God in my brokenness and said, I'm relying on your compassion. He is so good. And his love is so powerful, and his cross proves it. Do not come to him demanding, come to him broken and needy. And he will have compassion. Won't you pray with me? Father, you are a good God. You've loved us with an everlasting love. Thank you that there's nothing we could do or not do that would make you change your love to love us less or love us more. Forgive us, forgive me for how I've tried to add your kingdom to my life rather than surrendering my life to your kingdom. Forgive me for my arrogance. Forgive me for my pride. Forgive me for thinking I had something to offer you. The only thing I have to offer you is my brokenness and my sin and my life. And so I come to you right now with just open arms and unexpressed desire. Have mercy and compassion, oh God. Friends, I would invite you in this moment. I don't want you to walk out of here thinking something different about who God is and his love for you. He's worthy to give your life to. And I want to invite you in this moment to say, God, I admit that I'm a sinner and I have lived life on my own terms, and I've done this religion thing on my own terms, and it's wrong. Jesus, I believe that you died on the cross for my sin, that you were buried and that you were raised to life to save me. So save me. I commit to turn from my sin, and I dedicate my life and my allegiance to you and your kingdom alone above all others. Empower me to love you with my whole heart and soul and mind and strength without delay and without hesitation. I am yours. Fill me with your Spirit and the power of your Spirit to desire and to live a holy life. I am yours. In your name I pray, amen. Friends, listen, I love you. I'm proud of you. Good job. We're getting through Matthew. There's a lot there, yeah? Yeah. So this week, read chapter 15, read chapter 16. We're going to finish out chapter 16 next week, you understand? In the meantime, we thank God because he's picked us up when we've fallen, because we've fallen. He's turned us around when we get stupid, yeah? And he's worth giving our thanks to. So here's the deal. Stand up, use your open mouths, and let's sing this with a little bit of gusto. You got it? All right.